And welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. Always a pleasure to welcome State Representative Kirk Scheuring. Good morning.
Good morning, Susie.
Thanks so much for taking time out of what I know is a very, very busy schedule to spend some time with us this morning. I just always want to just say, what's new? So what is new, Kirk?
Well, there's plenty of things that are new. I think I would bore your listeners if I went into everything that we're doing right now. But I know some things based upon some past conversations that you and I have had that might be interesting to you and your listeners.
Yes.
And first and foremost, I and others from Stark County have been working very diligently on extending and improving U.S. Route 30.
Yes.
And there are some things that we did in the state operating budget that helped in that endeavor. I was able to get an appropriation of $250,000 to our RTIP. An RTIP is something I created under law a couple years ago. It's a regional transportation improvement project whereby counties can form together in partnership to work together in solidarity to have resources that are channeled to the debt service for a bond to pay for the improvements to US 30 or another regional highway. Now, there's only one RTIP in the entire state of Ohio, and that's our RTIP.
Oh, awesome.
And that is an RTIP between Carroll, Columbiana, and Stark counties. And we have a board, and we meet regularly. And with this $250,000 appropriation, we've been doing a lot of things over the last several months. We've just recently, for instance, hired Cleveland State University to do an economic impact study.
Oh, great.
We think that's important because we think a new and improved 30 will have a great benefit economically to our region of the state.
No doubt.
But we need some empirical evidence of that, and Cleveland State is going to do that for us.
Oh, that's awesome.
We also have a special, and this is going to get a little technical now, but
That's
there's
okay.
a special tax increment financing plan. Tax increment financing. Now, this tax increment financing plan that I'm going to describe is unique to our RTIP. There's nothing like it in the entire state of Ohio. And what tax increment financing does by way of background, it says that when a property is improved, when you take a vacant property and you put a building on it, for instance, that means that property has been improved and there's enhanced property values. When there is enhanced property values, that means there's more property taxes that are being paid. And under tax increment financing, you can take all or part of those new property taxes and apply it towards the debt service on a bond. We did this in Hartville several years ago with the construction of the new Hartville Hardware.
Oh, yes.
A $26 million hardware store, 6 acres in size. It's the largest hardware in the entire United States. So we worked with the owner, and everybody was in agreement, the township and the owner and ODOT, that we would divert some of those property taxes to the debt service on the bond. And that's why today construction has begun on improving State Route 619 in the Hartville area.
So that's perfect. That brings more people into Hartville then, where they can go to Hartville Hardware.
You're right. So here's the way it will work under this special provision for our RTIP and Route 30. So this particular RTIP tax increment financing plan says that we can take the new, and I'm underscoring the term new, revenues that come from the construction of new buildings in the Carroll and the Columbiana and Stark County areas. And then it's up to every political subdivision, be it the city, the township, the county, the school district. They'll decide if they want to divert some of that money of the new taxes that are coming in for the debt service on the bond.
Awesome.
So the way all this stuff works together is that we also have a consultant who's looking at a look back to ascertain if we had this special finance plan, tax increment finance plan in place years ago, let's say 5 years ago, how much money could we have generated if we would apply those new property taxes, income taxes, and sales taxes to the debt service for the bond.
Oh, my goodness,
and
right.
We feel that it could be in the neighborhood of several $100 million
Wow.
if we would have had this 5 years ago. Of course, we don't have it. We didn't have it 5 years ago, but we want to have something we can illustrate with the local political leaders, showing them the economic impact study of the Cleveland State report that will be coming out in about 6 months or so, combined with this look back that can show the kind of money we could generate if we're working together in unanimity, all three counties, and diverting not all the revenues, but some of the new revenues that are coming into our area, and show that if we do that, just like we saw with Hartville, if you do that, if you start diverting some of that money, then there's many more businesses that will be forthcoming, and they'll be locating along the new Route 30, and that's going to generate much more economic activity, and it just builds on itself.
Wow.
So we think it's an exciting tool in the toolbox, and we're anxious to see how it might work, but we can't do anything yet just because we need to look back. We need to have that study done, and we also need the economic impact study from Cleveland State. So both of those things are going to be forthcoming in the near future.
When you say then it will be up for them to decide if that's what they want to do with it, is that done through a vote, or how do people is that done through their elected officials?
By the school board, vote of the school board, by the vote of city council, by the vote of the board of township trustees, by a vote of the board of county commissioners, and it's permissive. So if they don't want to do anything, they don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
If they want to give 10% of the new revenue that's generated from the new construction of buildings, they can do that. If they want to give 50%, they can give that. It's all up to them. So that's the unique nature of this. There's no other finance plan like this in the state of Ohio, and it's, again, special just to the RTIP.
It does seem like it's so really, really such a positive thing that others would take a look at what we're doing and say, well, that makes a lot of sense. Why don't we do that too? Not too many things go across party lines these days, Kirk, but it sounds like this would be something nobody could be against.
Well, let me just tell you that we're what you hear about what's going on in Washington is not happening in Columbus. I get a little frustrated, frankly, because a lot of folks see the gridlock in Washington, and they think that all government is at a standstill. And no, we still get things done in the state of Ohio, and I'm very open to bipartisanship, always have been that way. And most of these things I just shared with you were passed in the legislature by a bipartisan vote.
Yeah.
So, Washington, and we've got some good people who are serving in Congress and the United States Senate. But it's just a trend that has occurred, and frankly, I don't think it's our folks who are representing us who are causing the problems, but others from other parts of the United States who seem to like to dig their heels in and don't compromise one bit when it comes to public policy.
Yeah. Well, they could learn a lot by looking at what happens in local government. And I've always heard all politics is local. Is that like a true saying?
Yes, because here at the end of the day, we have a representative government, representative democracy. And that means that whoever is elected to represent the people back home. Now, the way that works is that you have to be accessible and responsive to the people back home. But here's something that I think sometimes is lost in that. In a representative democracy, you send somebody like myself and others to Columbus to do our homework and to dig into the details of these issues, more details than you ever will get on a radio news broadcast or a newspaper or a television report. And then it's our responsibility to come back home and tell the people, here's what the real deal is, and here's what we're thinking, and be statespeople, who can make decisions and who can do what's right because we've taken the time to do our homework and do the things that's in the best interest of the people back home. All politics is local.
Yeah, and it's up to us to pay attention to. Kind of really to know what you all are up to.
The only thing I'm going to caution you on now, it seems like with blogs and internet, and even some of the media sources, everybody loves controversy. So you're going to read and hear and watch more of that than what you do as far as the positive things that are happening. So,
well, there's so much
but
good.
that's also the responsibility, and that's one of the reasons I'm on your show today. It's part of my responsibility is to communicate with the people back home so they can understand what we're doing, and can also, get a hold of me and tell me what they're thinking.
Yes.
So, and
well,
before we close out
appreciate
here
that.
this morning, I'll be more than glad to give my email address and make sure people know how to access me.
Perfect. We'll make sure that happens. Absolutely. Well, as we're talking about roads and infrastructure and how to get in and out of our community, we've got Hall of Fame Village coming along, which is going to put a huge, talk about economic impact. It's a game changer, and it's happening, and it's so exciting to see. What are you doing as far as helping with the roads, along that area? Because it's already clogged, and it's sort of, right. I mean, this past summer, that was tough getting in and out of there. So we were all imagining, I bet this is all going to change as far as the traffic pattern.
Well, there are short-term things that are being done now as we speak, and then there's some long-term things that I and others are working on. So on the short-term basis, Mayor Burnaby of Canton and Dan Meglin, the Canton City engineer, have been working very closely with the District 4 office of the Ohio Department of Transportation. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be $5 million worth of improvements to the interchange leading to Fulton Road and ultimately to Hall of Fame Village.
Wow,
where that's going to happen relatively soon.
Wow.
But Hall of Fame Village, once it's completed, and they're hoping that a lot of it will be completed by the year 2020, mm-hmm. Is going to be so big. They're actually projecting that there could be as many as 1, maybe 2 million people a year who will come into that village.
It's amazing.
Johnson Controls Hall of Fame Village. So we've got to start planning now to be ready to take that kind of traffic. If we don't, something that Randy Hunt told me, and I thought it was right on target. Randy Hunt is the chairman of the Pro Football Hall of Fame mm-hmm. board, and he said, Kirk, we're doing all these things to build Hall of Fame Village, but if we don't also simultaneously work with the new interchange into Hall of Fame Village, we will build it and they won't be able to come. We'll build it and they can't come. The opposite of build it and they will come. Yeah. We'll build it and they can't come. And we don't want that to happen. So I've already had some meetings with David Baker and Randy Hunt and the director of ODOT, Jerry Ray, and I plan to have more meetings with Jerry Ray and some of the engineers that the Hall has hired to talk about fast-tracking an interchange to make sure that as they move full steam ahead to build Johnson Controls Hall of Fame Village, that there also is going to be a simultaneous effort to build an interchange that mm-hmm. will accommodate that huge amount of visitors who will be coming into the village once it's completed.
My goodness, yes. When I think of like what it is now, it's a little tricky right now navigating that, the way you get from the expressway onto Fulton mm-hmm. Road. And if people aren't paying attention to the yield sign, which a lot of them don't, then it can get a little hairy over there. So I imagine that's all going to look different. You're thinking about this, right?
We're in the preliminary stages, but I can tell you that part of what we want to do is, obviously we got to make sure traffic flows. Mm-hmm. And we want to make sure it flows in such a way that you can get in and out of Johnson Controls Hall of Fame Village, park and then get out and do what you have to do. Major attractions across the United States have done this very successfully, so we'll be looking at those models
yes.
And try to see what we can do to replicate them.
No reason we can't.
But the other
either.
thing, we're looking at something that would be aesthetically pleasing. I don't know if you've had a chance, Susie, to see the Polaris interchange that's just a little bit north of Columbus, and it's just a very, very beautiful setting with trees and shrubs, and really speaks volumes about
nice.
The Columbus community. And we want the same thing to be true for people when they're traveling to Canton and Hall of Fame Village. We want them to see nice landscaping and a positive image for our community.
It's going to be great. All right, we need to take a short break. We'll be back, talk movies when we come back with State Representatives Kirk Schuring. After these words, you're listening to Our Community.